All right, ready to dive into a true classic.
Always. What do we got?
This one, keeps popping up on those must-read lists. The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker.
Ah, yeah, for good reason.
It's one of those that for good reason, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we get into the details, what do you think makes it was written back in 1967.
Right.
Before this whole knowledge worker world that we live in now.
Yeah.
What do you think makes this book still so relevant today?
Well, I think, when you think about it, knowledge work really is about effectiveness, not just efficiency. It's not about how fast you can answer emails or, churn out reports.
Yeah.
It's really about making those right decisions, focusing on the right tasks, and ultimately having a real impact. And that's really what Drucker's framework helps us to do.
So let's break down this framework, right?
Okay.
Drucker talks about these 5 key practices of effective executives. What's that first one, and how does it apply in today's world?
So the first practice is managing time.
Okay.
And I think this is more crucial now than ever for knowledge workers.
Really?
We're constantly bombarded with all these notifications,
Yes.
emails,
Yes.
meeting requests, and it's really easy to feel busy,
Yeah.
but not actually accomplishing anything meaningful.
Totally. Yeah, like drowning in busy work.
Exactly.
So how does he suggest we tackle this time management?
So he recommends a really surprisingly simple technique, which is actually recording how you spend your time.
Okay.
You track your finances to see where your money goes.
Right.
Why not track your time, which is arguably even more valuable?
That's a really good point.
Right.
I did try one of those time tracking apps a while back, and I was shocked at how much time I was wasting scrolling through social media or, just getting sidetracked by all these emails that weren't really that important.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Exactly. And once you start to see where your time is actually going, you can start to identify those time wasters and then make more conscious choices about how you're spending your time.
Okay, so it's not about working harder, it's about working smarter.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that leads us to Drucker's second practice, which is choosing what to contribute.
Okay, I'm curious about this one.
Yeah.
What does he mean by choosing what to contribute?
Yeah, so he challenges us to think beyond just completing tasks and to focus on making meaningful contributions to our organizations. So it's about asking, what can I uniquely contribute? Given my skills, my knowledge, that will have the greatest impact on the overall goals.
So it's aligning your efforts with the bigger picture.
Exactly. Not just getting lost in those weeds of your to-do list.
Yeah, totally.
So it's about proactively seeking out opportunities to make a difference, rather than just waiting for those tasks to be assigned to you.
Okay, so being proactive and strategic, not just reactive and tactical.
Precisely.
I like it.
And this focus on contribution ties directly into the third practice, which is knowing where and how to mobilize strength.
Oh, okay. How do we mobilize strength in terms of, knowledge work?
So Drucker says, forget about trying to be good at everything.
Right.
It's a recipe for mediocrity.
Okay.
Instead, we want to identify our strengths, those things that we're naturally good at and enjoy doing, and then find ways to leverage those for maximum impact.
Okay, so let's say if I'm a great communicator, but I'm terrible at data analysis.
Right.
I should focus on those projects that require strong communication, and I should just delegate the data crunching to somebody else.
Exactly. It's about playing to your strengths and building teams where everyone can shine in their own way.
It makes sense to recognize that we all have different talents, and to be able to use those talents to be more effective.
Absolutely.
And also to recognize our weaknesses too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And find ways to improve them. Or delegate tasks that require those skills to others.
Makes sense.
Who excel in those areas.
So it's not just individual strengths, but it's also about team strengths.
Exactly.
Building, a team with all these different strengths that can all work together.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
And that focus on strengths is crucial for the fourth practice, which is setting the right priorities.
This feels particularly relevant in today's world.
It really does.
Like, how does an effective executive, or really any knowledge worker, prioritize effectively?
Yeah, so Drucker emphasizes the importance of distinguishing between what's urgent and what's important. So often, we get pulled in a million directions by things that seem urgent in the moment.
Totally.
Like emails, meetings, requests from colleagues.
Yeah, but they might not actually be moving the needle.
Exactly.
On the important stuff.
Right. And so effective executives learn to say no.
Ooh, that's hard.
It is.
Say no.
It is to those urgent but unimportant tasks.
Okay.
And prioritize those activities that have the greatest impact.
And this is where that contribution piece comes in.
Absolutely.
If you know what you're trying to contribute,
right,
it's easier to say no to things that don't align with that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it takes a lot of discipline
Yeah.
to stay focused on those priorities.
So it's not about working hard. It's about working smart and strategic.
Absolutely.
And being intentional with our time,
Yes.
energy, our focus, choosing our contributions wisely, playing to our strengths.
Yes.
Setting the right priorities.
Yes.
I mean, that's 4 of the 5 practices right there.
I know, it's a powerful framework, right?
Yeah.
And we've just begun to scratch the surface.
Yeah.
But before we dive into that 5th practice, I want to pause and ask you,
Okay.
of those 4, what stands out to you as most relevant to your own work as a knowledge worker?
It's a good question, I think. For me, it's the combination of the time management piece and then also choosing what to contribute.
Yeah.
Because I often struggle with feeling overwhelmed by the sheer volume of everything.
Yeah.
And, requests and tasks. And sometimes I lose sight of the bigger picture.
I hear you.
Yeah.
It's a common struggle for knowledge workers.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's why, I think Drucker's framework is so valuable. It really gives us this roadmap for navigating all these complexities.
Okay, so I'm even more curious now to hear about the 5th practice.
Right.
What is it and how does it all tie together?
All right, so that 5th practice is effective decision making.
Okay.
And this is where Drucker really gets into the nitty-gritty of how to make choices that drive results.
Well, let's dive into that in our next segment. I'm ready to unpack his wisdom on decision making.
Sounds good.
All right, stay tuned. Okay, we're back.
Ready to tackle decision making.
Drucker's 5th practice for effective executives.
Right, effective decision making.
It feels like a big one.
It is. It is, Drucker believed that this was really kind of the culmination of all the other practices that we've talked about. It's where the time management, the focus on contribution, understanding strengths, and your prioritization skills all kind of come together.
So it's not just about making any decision.
Right.
It's about making the right decisions.
Exactly.
That drive those results.
Exactly.
And he provides a very systematic approach to this.
He does.
He says we shouldn't just be relying on our gut feelings.
Right.
Or making these impulsive choices based on incomplete information.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Right. So what's the alternative?
Right. So he outlines this process.
Okay.
That starts with gathering all the necessary information. Okay. So this might involve researching, consulting with experts, analyzing data, even just taking the time to reflect and really understand the problem at hand.
So it sounds like a very deliberate,
it is,
thoughtful approach.
Absolutely.
Rather than just reacting to whatever's in front of you at the time.
Right. He wants us to be proactive, not reactive.
Okay, I like it.
So once we have a clear understanding of the situation, the next step is to consider multiple alternatives.
So not just jumping on the first idea that comes to mind.
Exactly.
Brainstorm different options.
Yes.
Okay.
Explore the possibilities.
Explore those possibilities.
And this is where, that understanding of strengths and that ability to mobilize them comes in.
Right.
You can consider which alternatives really best leverage your team's collective talents and resources.
So it's about not only addressing the problem, but also leveraging those team strengths
Absolutely.
To maximize everybody's potential.
Exactly.
Okay.
So after you've considered the different alternatives, the next step is to assess those potential outcomes of each choice. So thinking through, the possible consequences.
Right, the pros and cons.
Exactly, both positive and negative.
So like a cost-benefit analysis.
Exactly.
But not just financially.
Exactly.
Think about the time, energy, impact on the team, morale.
Right, it's about taking that holistic view.
Okay, yeah, holistic view.
Yeah.
Considering all those potential ramifications.
Right, and then once you've made that decision, there's one crucial step.
Oh, lay it on me. What is it?
That a lot of people overlook.
Okay.
Which is communication.
Right.
Drucker emphasized that a decision is not truly made until it's communicated effectively to everyone who needs to know about it.
It makes sense because you can make the most brilliant decision.
Exactly.
But if it's not implemented, it's useless.
Absolutely.
And to implement it, you need to communicate it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Clearly, concisely, compellingly.
Yes, and this is where that ability to choose what to contribute really comes full circle. You know, when you're clear about those overall goals, the impact that you're trying to achieve, it makes it easier to communicate your decisions in a way that inspires action and gets everyone on board.
So decision-making, it's not just about the decision itself.
All right.
It's also about the process.
Yes.
Leading up to it.
Yes.
And the communication that follows.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a holistic process that integrates all those practices.
All right. Oh.
And one final thought on decision-making that I find particularly insightful is that Drucker said that the most serious mistakes often come from asking the wrong question.
Wow.
Not getting the wrong answer.
That's profound.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so easy to jump into that problem-solving mode.
Right, totally.
Without taking the time to really understand the problem we're trying to solve.
Yeah, you just want to get it done, you know, move on to the next thing.
Exactly. And that's why, you know, Drucker's emphasis on taking a step back, gathering the information, considering the alternatives is so important.
It allows us to frame the problem the right way.
Exactly.
Before we just jump in.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we move on, I just want to make sure I have this right.
Okay, yeah.
His framework for effective decision-making involves gathering information, considering multiple alternatives, assessing those potential outcomes, and then communicating the decision effectively.
Yes.
And it's all grounded in that understanding of your goals.
Absolutely.
And your contribution.
Exactly.
Okay, Hugh.
You got it.
That's a lot to take in.
It is a lot.
But it's good. I mean, I think this is all really helpful.
It is. It's a powerful framework. You know, it really is.
It is.
And when you approach decision-making with this level of intentionality and rigor, you know, you're much more likely to make choices that drive results. And move you closer to your goals.
That's what we want.
That's what we want.
This has been really insightful.
Good. Glad to hear it.
We've covered a lot today.
We have.
Exploring these 5 practices.
Absolutely.
But, you know, before we wrap up,
I'd
love to hear your perspective on something.
All right.
You know, we've talked about how relevant Drucker's ideas are for knowledge workers today.
Right.
But, you know, his book was written for executives.
It was?
Do you think these practices apply equally?
That's a great question.
To all knowledge workers?
I do.
Okay.
Regardless of position. Seniority. I think it gets to the heart of, you know, what makes his work so enduring. Yes, he wrote for executives. But the principles are fundamentally about effectiveness. And effectiveness is a quality that anyone can cultivate.
I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what your role is, your title is.
So whether you're a CEO or, you know, freelancer, individual contributor, all of these practices can help you.
Absolutely.
In your work.
I'd even argue that they're even more important.
Oh, interesting.
For those who are not in formal leadership positions.
Tell me more about that.
Well, think about it, you know. In a traditional hierarchical organization, you know, executives have a certain amount of authority, control. They can set priorities, delegate tasks, make decisions that impact others. But in today's, you know, flatter, more networked organizations, you know, we have to influence without authority. Collaborate across teams, navigate complex decision-making processes where we might not have the final say.
Totally.
So that ability to manage your time, choose your contributions, leverage your strengths, prioritize, make sound decisions becomes even more crucial. For those individual contributors that need to be effective in a
less structured environment.
Exactly.
It's structured.
Your framework provides tools for self-leadership.
I love that.
You know, taking ownership of your work.
Exactly.
And making that impact.
Exactly.
Even without that, you know.
The fancy title.
Fancy title.
The corner office.
The corner office, right.
But we can still be effective.
I love it.
Yeah.
This has been such a rich and thought-provoking conversation.
It has been.
We've covered so much ground.
We have.
But as we wrap up this segment,
what's
one key takeaway that you hope our listeners will walk away with?
I think, you know, the biggest one for me is that effectiveness is not about some innate talent or
Right.
charisma.
Okay.
It's about developing the right habits.
The right mindset
Okay.
and the right approach to work.
Okay.
And Drucker's framework gives us that roadmap for doing that.
I love it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's inspiring to think that we all have the potential
Yeah.
to be more effective,
Yeah, I love that.
regardless of our starting point.
Absolutely. So if you're listening and you're feeling overwhelmed,
Yeah.
stuck,
Yeah.
or just curious about taking your work to the next level, I
Yeah.
highly encourage you
Yeah.
check out The Effective Executive.
It's a timeless classic for a reason.
Yeah.
And remember, effectiveness is not a destination.
Yeah.
It's a journey.
I like that.
It's about continuous learning, growth,
Yeah.
and improvement.
Okay.
So be patient with yourself, experiment with different approaches,
Yeah.
and celebrate your progress along the way.
We've covered a lot of ground,
We have.
but there's always more to explore.
Always.
So in our next segment, we're going to shift gears a bit. Talk about some of the common challenges
Right.
that knowledge workers face
Yeah.
when trying to apply all these practices
Really in the real world.
in the real world.
Right.
And more importantly,
Yeah.
we're going to offer some practical tips,
Yes.
strategies for
Yes.
overcoming those challenges
Okay.
to achieve that true effectiveness.
All right.
Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the final part.
Yeah, our deep dive into the effective executive.
We've covered a lot.
Got a ground.
Drucker's 5 practices for achieving effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about how those can be applied to anyone, not just,
Right. Anyone who wants to make an impact.
executive.
Not just executives.
But, putting those principles into practice,
Yeah.
not always easy,
No, definitely not.
especially, in the real world
Right.
of knowledge work.
Right. With all the distractions,
Yeah.
interruptions,
Repeating priorities.
all of it.
So, in this final segment, I thought it'd be helpful to kind of, address those common challenges
Right.
that people face
Right.
when they're trying to implement these ideas.
Yeah. And how to overcome them.
Yeah, exactly.
Offer some strategies.
Yeah. Where should we start?
Well, I think one of the biggest hurdles
Okay.
that people encounter
Yeah.
is just finding the time to focus on effectiveness.
Hmm.
We're just
Yeah.
so caught up
That's
in
okay.
that day-to-day whirlwind
Yeah.
that it's hard to step back
Yeah.
and actually have that space for reflection.
It's like we're on that treadmill just trying to keep up.
Right, exactly.
So how do we break free of that cycle?
Yeah, so I think one strategy
Okay.
is to actually schedule dedicated time for effectiveness. Like
Fun.
literally
Yeah.
block it off in your calendar, just
Yeah.
like you would an important meeting,
A meeting with yourself.
a meeting with yourself.
Okay.
And during that time,
Mhm.
resist the urge to check email or get sucked into,
Right.
those urgent but unimportant tasks.
Yeah.
Use that time to reflect on your goals,
Mhm.
your priorities,
Okay.
and the progress that
Yeah.
you're making
Almost contributions.
on those key contributions
Yeah.
we talked about.
So being proactive, not just reactive.
Exactly.
Okay, I like it.
So another challenge that people often face
Yeah.
is saying no.
Oh, yeah.
We're so hesitant
It's hard.
to turn down requests,
Yeah.
even when
Even when you should.
they don't really align
Yeah.
with our goals
Yeah.
or contribute to our effectiveness.
You don't want to,
right.
people down.
You don't want to miss out.
Yeah.
But saying yes to everything
Right.
is detrimental
Yeah. In the long run.
in the long run. Yeah.
So how do we get better at saying no?
Right. So one tip is to just have a really clear understanding of your priorities.
You're non-negotiable.
Okay, your non-negotiables.
So that when a request comes in,
Yeah.
you can quickly assess,
Does this align?
does this align
Okay.
with what's important to me?
With what's important.
And if it doesn't,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to politely decline.
Okay.
Or,
Or offer an alternative.
suggest an alternative
Yeah. Yeah.
that might be a better fit
Okay.
for your current workload.
So it's about protecting your time
Absolutely.
and your energy
Yes.
for the things that really matter.
And speaking of protecting your time,
Okay.
another challenge,
Yeah.
in today's digital world
Mm-hmm.
is managing distraction.
Oh, yes.
We are constantly bombarded.
Yeah. The notification,
Notifications,
emails, social media.
social media.
It's like our brains are wired for distraction these days.
I know, it's crazy.
So how do we fight back?
Yeah, so one strategy
Okay.
is to try to minimize.
Those external distractions
Okay.
as much as possible.
So like Turn off notifications.
Cool, turn off those notifications.
Put the phone away.
Silence your phone.
Yeah.
Close those unnecessary browser tabs.
Yeah.
You know, find a quiet space.
Create a distraction-free zone.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And if you're working in a busy environment,
Yep.
you know, consider noise-canceling headphones.
Yeah.
Or listening to, you know...
Yeah, calming music.
Calming music, something like that.
I've also found that, like, setting those specific times for checking email and social media rather than just constantly monitoring helps me stay focused.
It's about reclaiming that control of your attention.
Okay.
And directing it where you want it to go.
So we've talked about time, distractions, saying no. Any other challenges?
One more
that
I think is worth addressing is delegation.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of knowledge workers, it's hard.
Struggle with delegating effectively.
Sometimes it feels easier just to do it yourself.
Right, I know.
Even if it's not the best use of your time.
I understand that feeling, but it really is essential for effectiveness, especially as you take on more responsibility. Yeah. It allows you to leverage other people's strengths.
Yeah,
And it frees you up for those higher level tasks.
Okay, so how can we get better at this?
Right. So first, I think it's important to identify those tasks that can be delegated without compromising quality or efficiency.
Okay.
Then you want to choose the right person for the job based on their skills, their experience. And then I think it's important to clearly communicate expectations. Provide them with the resources.
Give them what they need.
That they need to be successful.
Offer support along the way.
Yeah, support them.
And don't micromanage.
Right.
You know?
Let them do their thing.
Trust your team to get the job done. So it's about empowerment.
Empowerment.
Not just offloading tasks.
Right, yeah.
It's about creating that more collaborative,
Yeah.
effective work environment.
This has been fantastic.
Glad you enjoyed it.
We've explored these 5 practices in detail.
Yeah.
Talked about the challenges people face when trying to apply them.
Yeah, and hopefully provided some good insights there.
Yeah, I think the most important takeaway for me is that effectiveness is a journey.
Absolutely. It's not a destination.
Not a destination.
Not a destination.
Continuous learning.
Right, experimenting.
Refinement.
Refinement.
It's about figuring out
what works for you.
What works for you.
Yeah.
Your work style.
Your circumstances.
Exactly.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Absolutely not. But embracing those principles.
Yes.
Adapting them to your own needs.
Right. And
you can become more effective.
You can, yeah.
More impactful.
Absolutely.
More fulfilled.
Yeah.
Knowledge worker.
Exactly.
And who knows, you might even become an effective executive.
You might. The potential's there.
Yeah.
For all of us.
So go out there, experiment.
Yes.
Iterate. Keep striving for effectiveness.
We're excited to see what you accomplish.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Into the effective executive.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Until next time, keep learning.
Keep growing.
Keep growing.
Keep making a difference.
And making a difference.